Wonderful. So welcome everyone to our fifth School Garden Mentorship Workshop of the year on summer maintenance and volunteer management. This is a huge topic, and it's a topic that so often as community animators we get questions about. So we're really excited to approach this with a panel conversation to bring more perspectives and insight into this topic, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, before we start, for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Tessa Stiven. I'm the Central Island Community Animator with Farm to School BC. Previously, I worked as an outdoor educator, a costume teacher, and a farmer, and it's a joy to bring together all these passions in this role. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that today I'm calling in from my home on the traditional unceded territory of the Gwa'sala Nation, who have lived here since time immemorial. I'm a second-generation settler living on this land that is the lifeline for future Gwa'sala generations, and it's my commitment to be part of reconciliation in my community and in my work. For folks that are calling in, it'd be great if you could share your territories from where you're calling in the chat. And I have the pleasure of co-presenting with Sonia today, so I'm going to pass it over to Sonia.
Thanks, Tessa. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia Rokosh, and I'm the Kamloops Regional Community Animator for Farm to School BC. I'm calling in from Secwepemcúlecw territory of the Shuswap people. The city I live in is home to the confluence of the North and the South Thompson Rivers. It's a place that holds a lot of history and value to both the Shuswap people and also regional settlers. And I'm on this long-term journey to continue to learn about my physical spaces and the more than human beings that call these precious grasslands home. I'm rounding out my second year in this role at Farm to School BC, and I love it. I also work part-time on a horticultural therapy farm here in Kamloops, and I, like Tessa, have a background in outdoor education and work part-time as a teacher on call. We wear many hats. So before we start, I just want to share a quick background on Farm to School BC. Farm to School BC is a program that brings healthy, local, and sustainable food into schools across British Columbia. We provide students with hands-on learning opportunities that develop food literacy, and we strengthen the local food system by striving to enhance school and community connectedness. Farm to School BC is a program of the Public Health Association of BC and supported by the province of British Columbia. So here's a map of our 8 regional hubs across British Columbia. Regional hubs are coordinated by their local community animator, like Tessa and myself and other folks on this call, and they're supported by a network of stakeholders. So if you don't see your district on this map, don't worry, we're still here to support you. Our organization is always growing, and we're happy to support you by connecting you to the nearest geographical animator. So if you are an animator, maybe just like wave and let people know what region you're representing. Do a little dance. Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. So here is an overview of the year ahead. I can't believe we are already at May. Woo, number 5. For those that attended last year, you'll find the workshop themes are similar to previous years, but for this 2024 series, we've shifted a little to focus on our guest speakers and the unique knowledge that these mentors bring. So they're here to guide us on this journey. And with that, we're hoping to have these longer Q&A sessions to provide opportunities to tailor discussions to the current needs of your school garden. So like Tessa said, this is a really exciting and important topic. And looking ahead to June, we are going to be focusing on celebrating your garden. So we're going to look at spring recipes, harvest gatherings, and ways to have some honoring of the bounty of your collective energy. So don't miss it. And then go off on your summer vacations and don't come back till September. So I'll hand it back over to Tessa to go over what we'll be talking about today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sonia. We're talking about when you go off on your summer holiday and don't come back till September, what happens to the school garden in that time in between? And it's time now to be thinking ahead to summer. Summer is one of the biggest challenges that comes up when I'm working with school gardens. And really, it's about this misalignment between the growing season and the school season. And how are we still engaging in the garden over the summer when we don't have the structure of school to support that? So today, Sonia and I were going to give an overview of some of the physical and the people systems that you can set up to ease some of the challenges of summer. And then we're going to hand it over to 3 amazing panelists, 3 school garden mentors. Because summer maintenance is such a common challenge and such a large challenge, we wanted to bring 3 different perspectives on this topic. So today, our mentors that are joining us, we have Myra Connaty joining us from the northern tip of Vancouver Island. Myra is a teacher librarian at a public school as well as a band school and weaves gardening into her librarian role. We also have Michelle joining us. Michelle was our January garden mentor from Vanderhoof, and she's going to speak more about the incredible program at McLeod Elementary. And lastly, we have Matthew Kemshaw joining us today from the southern end of Vancouver Island, speaking to the garden coordination work that he's done in the Sault School District. So we'll get more detail about the panel shortly, but for now, I'm going to hand it over to Sonia to start a bit of a background on this topic.
Thanks, Tessa. This is so exciting. It's so nice having these three folks here today and you all. So I'm here to help us just do like a little reframe of aligning our goals and expectations of what we're really trying to do with our space that we've hopefully already connected with and initiated. So we are here to talk about what happens to our gardens in the summer, but first I want to like take us back in time to the beginning of our projects. So what were our dreams and hopes? Want to look at like a little bit of the day-to-day reality of the garden and then what we are really facing at this very moment. So in general, we had maybe this big dream. We have this perfect alignment of the garden bounty and the garden lessons with our curriculum. All of our students are 1,000% invested, 100% invested in this project. And it's like this rainbow of dreams. So that was like maybe at the beginning. The day-to-day, we've like faced a lot of successes, but also some challenges with infrastructure, perhaps on a physical level there in person or with like the grounds crew or a bigger picture maintenance piece. And maybe our germination rates were actually more like 50% instead of 85%. And students are maybe also 50% invested instead of 100%. So here we are at the reality of what's going to happen for the summer. So we've invested in this space. So what are we going to do with it? How do we not do this alone? And how do we not like sacrifice some of that initial dream as we're moving through this process? Well, Tessa and I are here to remind you that you can take some of that load off right now if you've got some guilt or some shame or anything that might be popping up for you, like unload it here. We are going to help you with the process of pruning away some of those complexities that we might feel as we're approaching this summer component of our garden. We want to help you triage some of the basic needs of your garden. So we're going to dive right into it. We're going to start with just reassessing some of our crop planning. So first and foremost, let's just shift and think about some low maintenance fall crops. You can do a lot of direct seeding at this time. You can direct seed winter squash, beans, potatoes, tomatillos. You can start them now and they won't take much care and attention throughout the summer. And if left unattended, they can make excellent sources to save seeds. Which brings me to my next slide and point. This here is my favorite option for low maintenance, but also bountiful garden options. You're planting these plants in order to see their full life cycle lived out in your garden. You don't have to think about any fruits to process, nothing to pull off. You actually want them to bolt. You want them to go to seed. You want them to dry out right before your eyes. You want to like let go of this control of needing to do something with that fruit. I think it's a shift in a process of how we look at gardens, to be honest. I think it can be really rewarding. And it's a great tool to help follow like any life cycle conversations you might be having in your classroom when they either come back in the fall, and also just in general talking about the advantages of plants fulfilling their whole life process. And then lastly, just like a quick little reminder here, you can always pivot 100% at this point from like what your idea was of your garden. It is like not too late to pivot. You can dig up some plants you started. You can give them away as Mother's Day gifts, like wink, wink, right around the corner. And then you can plant some of those low maintenance crops that we mentioned before, like for over the summertime, or you can transition to like leafy greens or radishes that you can harvest in the short window of time that we have before the school year. This always reminds me, a food literacy coordinator we've had tells a story about radishes, like just planted radishes. And that's fine because there's beauty in radishes and there's a lot of learning you can see there. You can eat all parts of the radish. You can just do so many lessons with the radishes. So when in doubt, you can always plant radishes. just laughing at myself here. I love it. Let's pivot. So also we want to just think about pivoting our maintenance in terms of the like structural sense too, right? So we want to sort out some of these systems we have in place to work smarter and not harder. And one of those really big systems is watering. I personally really do feel intimidated by watering, like my garden spaces, both collectively in the community and home. But I want to offer you a few gentle supports to try with your gardening team. And we really do have a great network of support on this call to help you if you feel stumped and like we didn't dive into anything enough today. So really do reach out to us. We love what we do. It's our job, and we want to just help everyone feel successful. But in the meantime, here's a couple things to consider. These three parts are helpful to take into consideration. You want to think about access, infrastructure, and frequency. So we're going to touch on all three of these really briefly, and hopefully we can ease some of your trepidations along the way. So, okay, first, water access. Confirm you can have access to your water over the summertime. Point blank there. Sometimes you might not have access to it. So really just have that conversation with your principal and your custodial staff to ensure that there's communication about what happens to that space in the summer in general. And then once you have clarity, I really suggest offering like a training or an orientation for folks who you know might be involved with watering. Seems simple, but really worth the consideration. And then thinking about water management and systems like sprinklers and a way of disseminating the water. Just a couple tips to consider is put your sprinkler up somewhere high to improve the range. And we're thinking about also soaker hoses or drip irrigation. There's so many different systems, but in general, they really help you do targeted localized watering, which over time reduces water use and also reduces weeds from popping up everywhere because you've really got that localized watering. Tessa and I were saying our love for irrigation, and Tessa said that drip irrigation reminds them of adult Lego. It's actually like super empowering to just like learn it and do it yourself. And it is not like power tools, which sometimes have their own barriers. It really is, can open up like a curious mindset when you're approaching irrigation. And also, some of the infrastructural pieces that come with irrigation include splitters. They're a great efficiency tool. The one on the far left there that you see, they help you regulate which direction your water is going to be managed like through different those like individual little levers there. And also maybe one of your hoses can be used for hand washing and one can be used for watering your garden. And then the other two pictures we have here are of timers. They come in all sorts of shapes and forms. And once you read the manual or have someone show you how to manage it, I think they're like the ultimate like chef's kiss solution to water management. But I do recommend reading through the manual or having someone who you know share their learnings from that timer. And then we just want to put up a few guidelines to remind folks of some principles we might forget from time to time when thinking about watering. For myself, I'm usually an overwaterer, and like that first piece there on the slide, I just need to remember that less frequent and deeper watering really is ideal. And then there's a couple other bullet points there just to really consider, like thinking about your soil texture, trying to see what that looks like before you really get started in that space with that relationship with watering. And watering 2 times a week in the summer is a really thoughtful consideration to have. And lastly, I just want to ask if any of you believe in magic, because I do. We do. We believe in mulching magic. Yeah, mulch is a great tool to help with so many elements, including watering less, warding off weeds, increasing a potential habitat for insects, increasing soil fertility, regulating soil temperature, and just a general reminder, mulch doesn't have to be rocket science and the ultimate material. You can use straw, grass clippings, leaves, burlap bags, cardboard, you name it. Just got to have a magic forefront of your mind. Okay, Tessa, thanks for witnessing my goofiness. I'm going to pass it back to you.
Thanks, Sonia. Mulch really is magic for all those reasons. So thanks for phrasing it in that direction. Wonderful. So Sonia's talked about some of the physical systems you can set up to ease the load in the summer. And now I want to look at some of the people systems that you can set up. So first of all, building community in the garden is a year-round mission. But if you've worked throughout the year in building this, it really pays off in the summer when you're reaching out to engage summer volunteers. There's many different avenues for building community, and collectively, when these pieces are working together, it actually transforms the culture of the garden. It transforms this culture into a place where people feel empowered, people feel like they belong, and they're excited to be part of the garden. There's a lot of different strategies that are listed on this slide. I just want to highlight a couple that are kind of more outside of the box thinking. One is student-led conferences. If your school is a school that does student-led conferences, it's great to be able to include the garden as a tour spot in those student-led conferences for getting more parents engaged in the garden. They might not be aware that the garden's at the school, and getting students to show their learning in the garden as well. Another thing is an open house in the garden, and that can be after school, either with school members or with community members, but just opening up the garden, make some iced tea from some of the herbs you have in the garden, and invite folks into the garden. Often neighbors are really curious. Maybe they even look over the school garden and wonder what's going on in there, and they may be your amazing volunteer that actually wants to water all summer. So think about these different ways that you can invite people into the space to build the community throughout the year, so that when it comes time for summer maintenance, you have more folks who are there. Looking more specifically at who are those people that might be willing to help out in the summer, I find it helpful to break it up into these two categories, looking at internal volunteers, folks that are already part of the school community, and looking at external. What are the other larger organizations and systems around the school that could support the garden? So first of all, looking internally, looking at some of the staff that are at the school, teachers, not just the core teachers, but also thinking about resource teachers, teacher librarians, some of the other roles in the garden, in the school that might be able to work the garden into their teaching. Also think about students. Perhaps there's a student that's graduated from that school that now has community service hours to do at their high school, or they've graduated high school and they're in a university project and they have the opportunity to do a community action plan. In Nanaimo, we had 5 university students come back and set up irrigation systems in school gardens. So how can you link students across those different grade categories? And then looking more externally, thinking what are the community partners in the area? This could be a nonprofit organization, it could be a community kitchen, it could be a food hub. Master Gardeners are an amazing program that is in many communities, and there's actually a volunteer service requirement for folks that are part of the Master Gardening program. So reach out to the Master Gardener, see if there's someone that could work in your school garden. Think too about some of the other centers nearby, senior centers, daycare centers, neighborhood centers, see how they could perhaps engage in the garden. And lastly, summer camps. Some schools that have community school coordinators actually run school district summer camps at schools, and I've seen success of those summer camps watering the garden and maintain over the summer. So think broadly about who could be a community. When you're thinking about community connections, one example that we see successful across the province is where community partners, food security nonprofits, have applied for funding through Canada Summer Jobs. And through Canada Summer Jobs, they're able to hire a student that maintains school gardens. And we've seen this on a large scale where nonprofits have come together and supported a whole network of school gardens, as well as a small scale where a nonprofit has one summer student and they go out and support 3 school gardens in that region with the watering over the summer. But I think there's a real asset in this program. You do have to apply for the funding in January. So think this is a longer term vision. Think ahead for the following year, or maybe there's a community partner in your region that's already thought in this direction. Once you have your volunteers in mind and you've built that community, start to think about how are you going to organize those volunteers over the summer. And there's so many different ways of doing that. A common model we see is kind of the weekly caretaker model, where people sign up to maintain the garden for a week. Another model is having work parties. So there's a few work parties throughout the summer where you get a bunch of folks in and it's more of an organized, structured project. Another way we've seen is that there's community garden plots within a school garden. So folks are coming in and taking care of their own community garden plot and then also maintaining the rest of the school garden over the summer. Or all this organization is sometimes coordinated by a nonprofit. So think about these different maintenance models and how you might incorporate a few of those into your school garden. Regardless of what model you're doing, there will be definitely a need for a lot of communication. And some gardens use this communication through more physical maps and signage, whiteboards with lists, a binder with a kind of garden operations manual, and other garden coordinators prefer to go digital, prefer to go online with this. But regardless of how you're communicating, here's a checklist of some of the items that you want to make sure you're including in your communication. And if you are more one of those online folks, here's a couple suggestions. I've seen Google Sheets be really effective. But there's also some online apps like Volunteer Signup and signup.com that organize both scheduling as well as task lists for volunteers if you want to take it in that direction. Lastly, you need to plan for volunteer appreciation too. I think so many volunteers, the most rewarding part they have is actually seeing the students impact and benefit from their work in the garden. However, when it's the summer, they don't always get that opportunity to be connected to the youth that they're making a difference with. So just think about some of the other ideas you might want to have that are posted on this slide for volunteer appreciation. Like always, Sonia and I try to fit a lot into our introduction, but just a reminder that Farm to School BC has a lot of this information recorded in some of our summer maintenance guides. And so over in our program library and also linked to in the chat and in our follow-up resources is the Farm to School BC School Garden Summer Maintenance Resource. And you'll see links to some of the different maintenance models and community partner connections that we've been talking about here. Okay. Don't want to take any more time away from our panels because we have 3 more perspectives on this topic. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Sonia.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tessa. Whew, we're doing great. We're all doing great. So just so the audience knows that we have these questions that the panelists already got to look at and take a moment to think about. So what we'll do, like the format and layout for the rest of our time here, is that each panelist will introduce themselves, and then they'll share like some thoughts and reflections on these questions, and we'll each have about 7 minutes and jump to the next person. And then we'll finish up our last mentor, and then there'll be open time for Q&A. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Myra. And Myra, take it away. That's it. Go for it. And I'll be communicating with you, Myra, if you need anything.
Okay. Yo nugo Myra. Gayukan Lakwik Mis. My name is Myra. I live in Cole Harbour, which is in the traditional territory of the Nakwaxda'xw speaking peoples. I am a teacher, librarian, and garden coordinator for 2 different schools. So I definitely bounce between a lot of different systems, both the independent with the First Nations school and within the school district as well. But yeah, today specifically, I'm going to talk about the Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw garden, which I'm very fortunate to be a part of. And I really have to thank my principal, Reed Allen, because right from the beginning, he's like made my dreams come true for a school garden. We have like 10 raised beds in the garden. They're each 4 by 8, so each class gets their own bed. We have a 20 by 30 greenhouse, which has like cement raised beds inside of it, so there's lots of heat inside the greenhouse. We have 2 big large composting tumblers. There you see we have rain barrels for water collection, but we also have there's 3 big like large capacity tanks that are gravity fed to the garden, where we have access to water as well. And we also have like a faucet access to the school. There you can see the 3 like gravity fed tanks that we have lined up there. Yeah, we have the composting tumblers, and yeah, it's very well laid out. It's all fenced, and it's also wheelchair accessible, which is great because we do have some students that have that need. So yeah, it's very easy access for the kids, easy to plant. All the beds are up really high, so the kids have access to plant, or some of them are down low for the littler kids, because we even have kids in pre-K. So yeah, as far as like crop planning for our school goes, I've been guiding the teachers since we started. I guess it would have been around this time last year. So we've really only been running like a year, and we use a like a communication program called Slack, and it goes throughout the whole school, so everyone kind of gets the same messages, or you can get the messages to the people that need to know in certain times, right? About what to plant and when, and people communicate back with me like with lots of questions about what to plant and how. Like we have one class that wants to plant only potatoes, but then I was kind of coaching them on how to chit the potatoes and how to row the potatoes and hill the potatoes. So yeah, all that kind of information can be shared, because I'm not at the school that often. I'm only there actually once a week. But yeah, that's a good way for us to communicate, for one, because it seems like I have all the knowledge and I'm not there often enough. But lots of classes for crop planning are seem to be planning more like those fall season crops. So they're picking ones so that when they come back in the fall, they can pick a pumpkin or a squash or things like that. Or potatoes is another good one, or garlic. We have some that plant in the fall, and the garlic overwinters until the spring as well. It just depends on what they want to do. some beds, people are planting things in the spring, like beans or lettuce or peas, flowers, things like that. But we do have a summer school program that runs for 3 weeks and usually in like late July. So during that time, like through the summer school program, we have access to everything that's growing in the garden there as well. So yeah, which is great. The summer school program is like overflowing with beautiful growing vegetables, and the kids absolutely love it. And then like in September, I'll start again, but I'll plant like overwintering vegetables in the greenhouse. So right now, even in the greenhouse, I just sent a message the other day to pick the broccoli, because there's so much broccoli and kale in the greenhouse now that like it needs to go into the kitchen. So we also have a cafeteria at our school, which is very, very fortunate, I realize. But so we have a chef there that makes stuff for the kids all the time, and she very happily takes all the lettuce and the greens and the broccoli and makes something beautiful for meals for the kids. Yeah, as far as like summer irrigation for our beds, so we have like we've partnered within the community programming to hire a summer student within the Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw Nation. So they hire a summer student from the band, and that summer student comes every day for during the week, like 5 days a week or whatever. They don't come on the weekends, but they come and they'll come and weed and they'll check the garden and they'll water the beds and they'll water the greenhouse. And yeah, they come basically over those 8 weeks throughout the whole summer. So we don't have to worry about that at all. And that's something that has made a world of difference to take that weight off of my shoulders, because I was like, oh, I'm going to have to do this all myself if I want to keep it running. But having those summer students who are kids that actually attended the Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw school when they were younger as well. Yeah, it's a beautiful cycle of that part of having it contribute back to the community. So we also run a garden club. So building a culture of community for gardening. We run a garden club throughout the whole year. And it's usually on Fridays at lunch when I'm there. And throughout the winter, it just depends on what we're doing. We have to water the greenhouse, but we'll be doing composting as well. Yeah, but all those winter things still need to be done. And yeah, lots of picking through worms and stuff for the compost. And also the grade 6-7 class, that's a part of their job throughout the whole school, is they go around every Friday and collect all the compost throughout the whole school, including the kitchen and the staff room and all the classrooms, and they put it into the composters. So yeah, looking forward, we'd love to have like a more Indigenous garden. I'd love to have like every class has its own bed, but I'd love to have like another bed just for Indigenous plants, including more like water play or outdoor kitchen stuff for the littles, because kids love playing in the water. Definitely the water barrels are a hit. Yeah, and just coming up with more plans as more people get enthused about it, because definitely there's more teachers that, well, and EAs and community members as well, that are wanting to be a part of the garden. Yeah, it's growing for sure. Yeah.
Oh, I already have so many questions. Oh, this is so beautiful. I love like the photos just say so much. So I have questions and we'll loop back to that. Thank you so much, Myra.
Nakwaxda'xw.
Thank you. And we'll lead into Michelle. Thanks, Michelle.
All right. That was concrete beds in the greenhouse like that is just awesome. I can't sort of get that out of my head actually, so hopefully I remember what to say here. Hello everyone, Hadi. My name is Michelle Roberge. I am a past parent, really. I haven't had a kid in elementary school in a couple of years, but I just can't let go. I'm up here in the center of BC within Sycus Traditional Territory, which is colonial Vanderhoof. So we are very different than the coast. We are essentially April to October, and then our greenhouse sleeps under snow for the next 6 months or whatever it is, and then we start up again. So we have but we have long, warm days. So I don't know what pictures are here, so I'm super curious as to what you picked. Okay, so I work with McLeod Elementary School. There are several elementary schools in Vanderhoof. This school is right in the middle of the community, and we are just so fortunate to be located, I should say, the community garden became located within like a block and a half of our school, about just over 10 years ago. Farm to School has been at our school for a long time. We're 12, 13 years into our farm to school garden process. So we have a lot of history and we've done a lot of trial and error to get where we are. But this is just an example of, this is at the community garden, and this, like, half those kids are graduated and are graduating this year. And I'm like a decade younger there. But the success of our program really has been through a lot of partnerships. This was our very first year in the community garden, and we shared the space with the community garden plot holders. And this is about summer maintenance. And we have tried all the things for summer maintenance because it really is the biggest challenge. We have such a short season that those 2 months of summer are pretty precious to folks, and everybody goes camping and leaves and all that. So we've tried many different things. And what do you have next for me on the pictures? All right.
Michelle, these photos are just a little background to give people context for what you're talking about, but you can just stick to the 3 questions
Okay,
and provide some tips.
good.
We just wanted to visualize. There's just so much. Yeah.
Okay, you can
incredible pictures. So we'll leave it there.
Leave it
Okay,
there
great.
for right now. So this is, so we own a 20 by 40 greenhouse at the community garden, and we love Lee Valley. We have that irrigation system was the thing that saved our summer watering maintenance program, and made it go from, oh, I signed up for a week and I forgot to water the greenhouse and it was 30 degrees out, to we're covered, it's on a timer, it goes, it does it. So highly recommend investing in that. It's changeable. We've had to reorganize our greenhouse space. These are the older beds, and we built new beds, but that, you're right, Sonia, the Lego-ness and the whatever those things are that my kids had as kids, you can reconfigure, but it is a real lifesaver in the greenhouse. So I highly recommend that. And yes, Lee Valley is a friend. Use them. And in the presentation that Sonia and Tessa gave, the summer student grant is what is the other lifesaver for our summer program. We had the 2-day method sign up for folks. We had the 5-day, we had the week, paper maps. This was sort of pre-app time, but we would have folks sign up. And when we did have that, the calendar sign up for parents to come in and maintain the greenhouse, but we also have an outdoor plot and raised beds, or just an outdoor plot outside, sorry. Specifying exactly what you need to do during those days really helps folks, because not everybody knows, right? And so they're like, okay, we have this week to take care of the school garden, and they get there, and it can be overwhelming because it's a big greenhouse and it's a big plot of land outside, so it's a bit intimidating. But if you say, okay, you're just going to water everything on day 1, then people just water everything. On day 2, you're just going to weed everything. Okay, great. And then day 3, you're just going to pick any tomatoes or whatever that might be ripe, and this is what you're going to do with them. And people are like, okay, I can manage that. So if you're pretty specific, then it's easier to engage parents and families. And then they're like, oh, I can bring my kids. Like, this is a thing we can do with our kids. So I highly recommend that. But if you are able to apply for the student summer grant, it's great. This is how we partner with the Nechako Valley Food Network, who really runs the rest of the community garden. We say, okay, we're going to help write the grant to hire the student, and we'll help manage the student, the worker, but let's share the worker. So we again hired someone for 35 hours a week for July and August, and they're going to probably spend about half their time taking care of farm to school, and then half their time taking care of the rest of the garden. And that is great and has been very, very helpful. And it's great because we've had previous kids who were farm to school kids come back and get paid to work in the garden, and which is good for everybody. We also have a partnership like with the same organization. Sorry, am I done? Did I
Yeah,
miss?
I messaged you. It's okay. No, it's okay.
Oh,
Don't worry.
shoot.
It's okay. No, but I like this is perfect. I think this leads really nicely into
Good.
some collaborative work with Matthew, and then we're gonna loop back for questions. Don't worry. It's
Awesome.
we're doing great. This is great. You're doing great. Thanks, Michelle. Matthew, so take the floor.
Okay, thanks everybody. Hi everyone. My name is Matthew Kemshaw, as you can see on the screen. I'm the executive director of the Flourish School Food Society. But for the last 4 or so years, I guess coming on almost 5 years now, I've worked as a garden coordinator in the Souk School District. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my experiences, specifically with summer garden maintenance. So we run a summer garden work experience program for the last 3 years. We've offered the opportunity to teenagers to get involved with helping caretake some of the school gardens in the Souk School District. And we actually promote it as a work experience program. So students, if they complete 100 hours of volunteer work experience with us, can get a full course credit for their time. We also apply for Canada Summer Jobs positions. So I've had a few students who have volunteered with us in the first summer and then gone on to get a full-time summer job with us. So there's Abigail and Robin with me at one of the gardens we're building at Edward Mill Community School in Souk. They're 2 students who started out as volunteers and ended up working with me. I've hired Abigail again. She just started on May 1st working with us. And so we have this great volunteer force of young people that can help us maintain the school gardens, and we do all kinds of fun stuff, from building rain barrels here at Edward Mill Community School to volunteering on local community farms. We're saving some wheat seed in the picture on the right at Machosen Farm here. It's kind of a ragtag traveling group of young kids. And increasingly, I've tried to make it as informal as possible, in part because I really don't like having to, I guess I get really nervous about the idea of having to be a teacher and showing up and having like a really facilitated plan to work with these kids every day. It's a lot. I feel like a lot for me to carry as a facilitator. So I've tried to really sort of lean into the truth that it's a work experience program, and that we show up and we work in the gardens. And I really have tried to create systems to support the youth in recognizing that they have leadership capacity and they can figure out what they want to do in the gardens. And I really try to lean on them to encourage them to do what they want to do, to take on projects that they're interested in. So we've had students try to learn how to grow mushrooms in sheds, and we've had other students who have developed, signage projects and want to spend a lot of time making art and things in the gardens. Other students just want to be told what to do, and they end up really enjoying, pulling weeds. And I find out, a couple students are happy to spend hours a day just kind of with their head down, pulling weeds and doing that kind of thing. So we really just try to make it, I don't know, like a youth leadership experience, I guess. So that's, I guess, an example of how we've built a culture of community investment and engagement in the garden, and really trying to support youth in getting involved in caring for their garden spaces. And one thing that comes of that is by building this program through the summer, we have these high school students who become really big champions of their school garden throughout the school year. And so some of these young people end up, bringing their friends into the garden and doing all kinds of stuff, especially in our high school gardens all through the school year. And that's really kind of a cool thing to see. And some of them end up going into post-secondary studies too, and following their passion for land care and sort of sustainability and, into their direction for their future. I'm looking at the questions I was supposed to answer to here. Just a couple of things that we do in terms of the way we design and manage our garden to decrease summer maintenance. Because we have this workforce, we don't worry too much about that, but we do try to plan planting of crops to be harvested more within the school year. In some of our school gardens where we don't have as much youth energy through the summer, we sometimes will even leave gardens to be fallow if there's no irrigation system. It's so much effort to try to care for a garden if you don't have an irrigation system in place through the summer. And I often encourage schools, if you don't have an irrigation system, try to grow a bunch of food that you can harvest by the end of June and then just shut her down for the summer and then start up again in the fall. But most people don't want to do that. So I always try to build irrigation systems. So I've built quite a bit of knowledge about how to install automated irrigation systems in school gardens, and you can do it pretty simple with you saw a picture earlier of an oscillating sprinkler on a hose that is set up on a hose bib with a simple timer. That's really easy to set up. Anybody really, I think, can do that, and it sprays water everywhere, and that keeps your garden watered. It also waters all the paths and everything, so you end up with lots of healthy weeds. But we also install lots of drip irrigation systems, so putting the water exactly where we want it in the gardens, and that's pivotal, I think, for working smarter and not harder. In terms of a tool or method that's helped us organize summer maintenance, the biggest thing that I always fall back on is just a whiteboard in the garden. We've tried to organize people with all kinds of online technologies, and somebody mentioned Slack, which I've heard is a really great tool, but we always just fall back onto blackboards and whiteboards on a garden shed in the garden, where we just leave to-do notes, and we try to provide a variety of tasks, and we really encourage people to pick what they feel inspired to do, what's good for their body, what's good for their soul in that moment, and make sure that there's a diversity of tasks on the board, especially when we have different groups coming to the garden. If I'm managing a garden space and I know that there's going to be different people coming to care for the garden, I really try to make sure that that whiteboard is got a lot of interesting tasks on it, and a variety of tasks, not just spend 3 hours, pulling broom or whatever, like really backbreaking labor. You can throw in some of those backbreaking labor tasks for the people who want to come and get a good workout, but also throw in some other activities that are, various, so that you can, everybody likes to just kind of move from one thing to another in the garden, be able to do different things at different times. So, yeah.
Thanks, Matthew. I'll pause you there for a moment. That's perfect. That's so lovely. And what a honest reminder of the power of a whiteboard and that diversity of tasks. That's great. That's awesome. So, okay, well, I'm full of questions. This is really robust, and what a nice way to hear from this expertise that's in the room. So we have 16 minutes, and what we're hoping is that folks can bring some questions forward. You can either raise your hand, or if you have a question, you can put it in the chat box and it can be directed to someone specifically. And so maybe I'll give it a minute for someone to raise their hand or put a question in, and then I've got questions too, in case no one else has got one to bring forward right away. Tessa, have you got questions too?
It's such a wonderful variety from the 3 different setups. They're all also, we've showcase examples that are really successful programs. And I do want to,
Mhm.
I think Matthew had a great thing, like you can let something go fallow, or you can just set up one sprinkler and hope for the best all summer. So I think we've really shown like a high bar of how you can engage school gardens over the summer, but also reminding folks that there's that whole spectrum. Kind of back to Sonia, where you started about seed saving gardens or just planting radishes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I will bring a question forward and see where it goes. Myra, I was curious, and it sounds like Michelle was too curious about these concrete garden beds. Like, I just wanted to see if you had any like general pros and cons to that, and or why that was the choice.
So it was like a $30,000 grant that we got from, I do believe it was ISWATAG, which is Indigenous Zero Waste Technical Advisory Group, who we got like our rumbling compost tumblers, and we also got the greenhouse. And so when I designed it, like I knew it was going to be like a pretty skookum greenhouse, and it was built out of yellow cedar, which is locally harvested on the north end of Vancouver Island and locally built by Zoff's Greenhouses as well, which is amazing. Like we really tried to keep things local. And yeah, originally when I had designed it, I was just thinking like pots, because I'm always like a scrimper saver gardener, but it's my principal Reed Allen that's like, nope, we got the money, we're going to put into it, we're going to make it like, this is a big deal, we're going to make it permanent. And so yeah, and he wanted it wheelchair accessible, right? So the pathways are wide enough to get through, and he just didn't want anything like getting in the way. So yeah, it's all very nice and easy to access, and it does hold a lot of heat, especially in the summer. But like last summer, we had tomatoes like crazy, cucumbers like crazy, and it was our first summer, and we were like blown away by the productivity. And then this winter, yeah, just the amount of greens, lettuce, kale, broccoli that's coming out of there right now. Yeah, it's phenomenal. But it is because having those cement, it does hold a lot more heat than just if you just had things in a bucket, right? Or a pail or pots. Yeah, it just holds a lot more heat. So yeah, it grows way better for sure.
That's great. So yeah, that's amazing. In my head, I'm like, concrete. Whoa, that's a great idea.
Yeah, well, but it's permanent, right? Like
I was just gonna say though, it's not moving. So is there forethought, like, or is it forward thinking about what happens next? Is it?
well, yeah, because he wanted it to be like a permanent infrastructure, and it's going to be there for the long haul. And yeah, you'll just like, add compost to the soil every year and upgrade it. And
Yeah.
yeah, and rotational planting, right? Plant different things. So
Mhm.
that's part of me communicating with the other gardeners or people how to keep the healthy soils in there, right? Because we're not
Yeah.
emptying them out every time and putting new soil in. Yeah, it's yeah, we've only been running it for a year, but so far it's great.
No, that's amazing.
And we have wooden beds because they were there, and we got ants and ants and ants and ants, and we had to take, and it was a great job for the grade sixers, take all the soil out of the garden, dismantle everything, rebuild. And at the community garden, we're doing more tin, like wood frame, but tin beds, but
Yeah.
we have wood, so we'll probably get ants again. But I don't know if I can convince them to do concrete.
Yeah, it's a huge commitment, right? Because it's permanent. But you're right, there's less bugs, it doesn't rot, all of those things.
Yeah, thank you just for putting that in my brain to think about. We've got a question in the chat, and maybe I'll start with Matthew if you wanted to kind of start answering. The question is there's a wondering from Sandra about who benefits from the summer produce in each location. So maybe Matthew, then Michelle, then Myra. Maybe we could just do a little rotation there.
Yeah, so we prioritize harvesting for use during the school year. So We actually try to bring quite a bit of food in and process it, either freeze it or can it, and a little bit dehydrating too, to make it available to school food programs through the school year. And we're lucky to have access to a school kitchen where we can do that once a week or every other week. We also give a lot of food away to the people who help care for the gardens through the summer. For us, that's mostly the youth volunteers who are involved. And they take bags of produce home every day. And then we've also tried to run little farm stand markets to sell the food, and that's really fun for the youth because they get that kind of business experience of getting to think about how to set up the market, how to do marketing, and like how do you prepare your table to make it attractive, and then managing the money as people come in and the customer kind of interaction and all that. It's quite rich, but we've had mixed results with actually being able to get lots of people to show up, and it can be kind of hard if you do all the work and you spend a day designing your table and then you spend half a day setting it up and you only get 5 or 10 people show up in several hours. It's a bit disheartening, but the kids actually seem to be fine with it. Yeah, so that's what we do.
Thanks, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pretty much the same. The majority of what we grow goes for to our school program. So we had just go way back. Initially, we brought food in 4 days a week from a restaurant, and then the parents did like a hot dog the Friday, and we then slowly, with the Farm to Schools support, went to a salad bar once a week, then to 3 days a week, and now we have 2 staff that cook meals for the entire 270 students every day. And we're cooking hot meals for other schools in our community now. So, and a lot, so everything that we grow goes into the lunch program, but folks take stuff during the summer as well. And we had 1 year with like ridiculous amounts of basil, and so we sold that. but we did just to add to that, always harvesting in the summer is a little bit complicated because what do you do with it, right? The school's closed. And so now we have an outdoor cooler, like a walk-in cooler that's accessible it's not in the school, it's in the parking lot of the school. So now if there's stuff to harvest, you just bag it up, put in the date on it, and you can just go to the school, unlock the thing, put it in there. And so I think that will really help with a bit of the logistical confusion of what to do with summer stuff that's harvested in the greenhouse in the summer.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. Great.
And so for us at the Gwa'sala Nakwaxda'xw school, most of it goes to the students. The students harvest it. The students, they grow it, they harvest it, and it goes to the kitchen. And then we have our chef Sharon that cooks it all into something for whatever they're eating there. Because especially with on the reserve with the Indigenous kids, it's hard to get them to eat vegetables. But it's amazing how much has changed since we've had the garden, and how much kids are eager to try new things and ready to eat kale, and they want to try new things. And Sharon, she used to say she would hide it in sauces, and she's like, they wouldn't notice it if zucchini if it was in the spaghetti sauce, right? But now they freely will eat like cut up zucchini, fresh slices, and it's totally amazing. And then in the summer, so we have the summer school program, so we use vegetables for that. And then anything extra goes to the elders in the community. So we'll take it to the elders center, and they will have hot lunches for the elders and for the community for that, for sure. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So we've got just over 5 minutes left, or 5 minutes now. Tessa, I wonder if you've got one more poignant thought or question, and then we can wrap it up.
I do have another question if no one else is jumping in there. I just also want to comment first, say, Myra, amazing to see that shift happen in a year. Like to think about how soon this program has really shifted eating behaviors. It's phenomenal to see that shift.
So a part of it, so I've had my farm here out in Cole Harbour, and for years I've taken the kids from the school out to visit my farm, and they've always had the opportunity, like, pull a carrot out of the ground and eat it, or pick a fresh raspberry. And so I they've always attributed that to me, right, and my farm and my personal life. But now that we're at the school and it's like growing and they get to do it themselves as well, they already know, like, and I'm always so excited about it and enthusiastic. So they see that, and yeah, it's definitely growing really quickly. Yeah.
That's great, and speaks to how important that relationship building
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
within this programming.
Yeah.
I had another question for you, Matthew. Just curious, because you work with multiple schools, administrators, with school districts. How have you worked to ensure that you have water access and access to the sites over the summer? I feel like that's one of the more common things I hear, even from teachers that have been gardening for years in school, and all of a sudden their water shut off in the summer, and the disheartenment that that brings. And so just curious, as your perspective of working with multiple schools, any tips or tricks for ensuring that relationship with facilities?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's been always a challenge for for me, and I've worked in a number of school districts over the many years I've been doing this work, and it's always been a bit of a thorn in our side. Um, the relationship, with the facilities department usually is somewhat fraught, and there seems to be always a little bit of friction that exists, and a lot of it seems to be um, it comes down to relationships and a lack of clear communication and understanding of one another's challenges. So the facilities department doesn't seem to understand the unique challenges of being a teacher and trying to care for a school garden, and teachers and other support staff who are trying to care for school gardens don't very well understand the challenges of being a facilities maintenance manager and having a whole school district to take care of. And so I've found I've been in the position mostly as the person trying to care for school gardens, and for a long time I got really angry and frustrated with facilities guys and their inability to work with us to support water access. And I found that didn't get me very far, as you might expect. Being an angry and disgruntled um, person, didn't get me much traction with facilities department and make them very inspired to help. And so I've taken in the last 5 or 6 years a more collaborative approach, and I've found that actually has worked really quite well. It's taken me about 4 years to build relationships with the irrigation tech and the facilities maintenance manager and the dispatch manager who does all of and figuring out how the facilities department works and how they make decisions about how to do their work. But as I've learned to appreciate these people and connect with them in a human way. Every time I see them, I try to talk with them in a nice and caring sort of way. I've become known to them as somebody who cares and is consistent and wants the best for everyone. And that's meant that I've been able to actually start entering into discussion about how we can get water turned on at the right time of year for our school gardens, and also like how can we create policies and procedures that support efficient communication between school-based actors and facilities departments and things. And we were actually working on the development of like a policies and procedures draft for our school district in collaboration with all the disparate actors who kind of need to be aligned. And those it's a big relationship building thing, and it requires a lot of investment, which is hard to ask of a parent volunteer or a teacher who's already got a full job. But building relationships with those folks and trying to understand their unique constraints, and yeah, it has helped me a lot in getting access to water and just being able to have conversations about, hey, we need like a hose bib inside of this garden, so we don't have to be hauling a hose like across the school and connecting it up every time we want to water something and then disconnecting it and hauling it back. It's an insane amount of labor that gets asked of a lot of school gardens. So it's a long answer and maybe not a very easy answer, but that's been my approach.
I think that's a wonderful answer, Matthew, and it echoes my experience with schools and school districts as well. Yeah, collaboration, relationship building, and patience. A lot of patience and a vision for a system that could work for everyone.
That's right.
So thanks for sharing that. Sonia, do you have any final words?
No, no, this was really lovely. Thank you so much for all of your time. And like Tessa mentioned, these are such mixed and varied experiences and do pivot us to think about these like success stories. So maybe everyone can come back and like at some point share their like biggest challenge that they couldn't get past, you know? Like I think there's like so many layers to seeing this part, like that success piece. And like there's, you know, we all have these roadblocks. So I've really appreciated everyone's time, like addressing these with honesty and humility, and yeah, just coming out on your Tuesday at 4:30 now. So thank you so much.
Yeah, wonderful. And thank you, panelists, for sharing these different perspectives. We do have panelists' contact information, a little bit more about their projects included in our follow-up resources. So an email will be sent out following this workshop with that information. So if you have more specific questions about a project that you've heard, you can reach out to our panelists for that. And please reach out to Sonia anytime too. We can connect you with the animator close to your region, as we love to be on the ground and help support this work in your specific context of your school. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you to everyone for making it out today.
Thank you so much for inviting us to speak.
Thanks, Michelle. I feel like it's a cameo experience.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Gila Kasla.